So the tone of your voice greatly impacts how your words are received and also how your listener perceives what you are attempting to say. And that's essentially the topic tonight that we're going to dive into. Stop yelling and do this instead. We'll be right back right after the intro. You are excellence. Your mind is of excellence. Your visions are of excellence. Your unique superpower is nothing short of excellence. You amplify a voice of excellence. Your contribution to this world will be of excellence. You will achieve your highest goals and desires with excellence. Excellence in everything, every time. Hey family, I'm Lanita Hostin, your favorite soft skills coach, and I help Black moms create better connections with their children by helping them to apply soft skills. Soft skills are things that we cannot measure, but they play a great role in helping us create and maintain strong relationships. Think of them like interpersonal skills. And so what I do every week, we dissect a particular soft skill and we apply practical tools and share them with you so that you are empowered to have stronger connection. I don't know if you know this, but public speaking is a soft skill. Your ability to articulate your thoughts and words in front of an audience, even if there are 2 people there or 2,000 people there, that is a soft skill. And so the Stage Power series is something that we've been doing for the past 2 weeks. This is our 3rd week. And last week, if you were here, we talked about articulation and pronunciation. And I would love if you were here with us last week. Tell us what was your main takeaway from last week on the topic of articulation and pronunciation. What did you learn? If you're watching for the first time, I'm excited that you're here. Let me know where you're watching from. And if you are watching live, you can drop it in the replay, drop it in the comments. I'm here. And if you happen to catch the replay, you can type #replay. Last thing, if you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe, and please share if you feel like the information that we're sharing is something that you may find valuable or someone that you're connected to could benefit from what we are talking about. Okay, so last week we talked about articulation and pronunciation. We gave some practical ways for you to apply that. This week we're talking about tone, and I titled today, Stop Yelling and Do This Instead. And when I say yelling, I mean having an elevated pitch with the intention of having someone maybe take you more serious, or maybe take your message as more firmly, or delivered in a firm way. Maybe it's sometimes an elevated pitch is an attempt to come across as authoritative. Sometimes an elevated pitch is you want to convey the seriousness of your message. But here's the thing. I feel like you can do all of those things without yelling. One of the most powerful ways that you can speak to someone, to be honest, it's softly. It's softly with a very clear intention of the words that you're saying, like how I'm speaking right now. I do this all the time. When I first started, and I'll share a video with you back in 2015 or 16, I was at an organization, I was speaking somewhere. When I first started, I thought that being loud meant that you were conveying a very strong appeal to your audience. You're capturing their attention. You're really driving home your point. But as I got more practice and reps in, and after I watched my playbacks, like the recordings of my speeches, I realized that I was yelling. And I started to adjust my tone. Before we jump into that, I want to remind you really quickly, there are 3 ways we can work together. Most of you know the first way, you can bring me in to speak. That's probably the most common way. You can hire me to train if you have maybe a front-facing group, colleagues, small group. Maybe you have a professional development day, or you're looking to develop your team. You can bring me in to train on soft skills. Remember, public speaking is definitely a soft skill. And then finally, my favorite is partnering for maybe a long-term programming or initiative. That's something that we can do as well. So those are 3 ways we can work together if you are wondering that as we dive into tonight's topic. And so I just want to share with you 3 things that you can do when you're attempting to be conscious about your tone. And I want to say this, like, Your tone conveys emotion, and that what is being conveyed greatly impacts how your words are understood to the recipient. So your tone is a combination of your pitch, your volume, and also the emphasis that you're using when you're speaking. So I'll give you an example. I'm gonna give you a very cheerful tone. I'm gonna use the words "that's great." So this is cheerful. That's great. This is like sarcastic. That's great. This would be kind of like indifferent. That's great. So, depending on whom you're communicating to, I want you to think about how do you want them to perceive what you're saying? And based on how you like to be perceived and are understood, that's the tone that you should speak in. So, I'll give you another set of words. Let's use congratulations. Ooh, this is a good one. So, if you are speaking in a cheerful or joyful tone when you say congratulations, you might say congratulations. So there's an elevated pitch. You can feel my excitement. If it were a kind of like sarcastic tone, it might say congrats. Congratulations. Or if it were in a indifferent tone, it may say congratulations. There's a difference. There's some intentionality that we have to take when we're attempting to communicate to the people that we love and or are leading, and that's why tone matters. I wanted to play this video for you guys. I was watching a clip on Little, and a supervisor came in. She was giving instruction to her team, and she was speaking at an elevated pitch, and she was doing this. And you have to watch these things in order to have an understanding of how they impact their listener. So one of the ways that I think that we could monitor our tone, first, I think the biggest thing is we have to record ourselves when we're speaking. So if you have an opportunity, if you lead a meeting, lead a ministry, you lead a virtual call, if you speak in some way, how can you capture um, your performance, for lack of better words? So I remember when my mom was interviewing in the pandemic, I told her to prop up her cell phone and record the interview that was taking place on the computer so that she could hear her voice. That's the only way that we could have a measure of how our tone sounds. So if you are having a very, maybe you're having a conversation with a family member, put a phone nearby so that you can record the tone to see if you feel like you were able to convey your thoughts to that person in the most effective way. So I'm gonna play a video with you. This is me practicing what I preach. This is an old video of me speaking, and I want you to pay close attention to my tone. Ryan remembers some words back. She hung up the phone and she said your acceptance letter is coming in a week. In 2 business days, it was in my mailbox. That's the power of a connector. You need a connector in your circle. Those are people who are friends or associates with decision makers. People who make good decisions and make things happen. Gotta have a connector. Stay connected. It's so interesting watching older clips because I could just think of 10 things I wouldn't do that I was doing in that video. When you are driving home your point, and I use this example often about how my guidance counselor in high school was able to get me admitted into my first choice school because she was a connector. And so I tell the story and then I make the point. So I tell the story exactly how me getting the letter, taking it back to her, us having that moment of joy because I got accepted, and then I transition into why I mentioned the story. And so I elevate my voice in this video and I say, that's the power of being a connector. You need a connector in your circle. Say connector. I'm laughing because it's funny now, but it's very amateur-like, to be honest. And the point that I'm trying to make is that when you are putting an emphasis on your tone, you have to slow down. When you are driving home, and this can happen in an interpersonal relationship where it's just you and another person. But when you're so enthusiastic and so like the moment of intensity, what you're trying to convey, it's you have a strong feeling about it. Usually your conscientiousness about how you're saying it goes away. So the only way to change that is to slow down. Again, a lot of the concepts we've been practicing for the last 3 or 4 weeks as it relates to speaking and oral communication, they take practice. And so they take practice and a level of heightened awareness that an average person wouldn't typically have. So when you are preparing to communicate something and you feel very strongly, very passionate about it, perhaps talking about it even gets you upset, you have to slow down. So slowing down might mean taking a deep breath and saying, okay, give me a minute. Because if you don't take that moment, what typically happens, like I showed you in that video, once you start at a high, it just increases. And think about the last time you got into it's not an argument, but um, maybe a debate. And think about how your tone over time, you got gradually, typically louder, typically more aggressive. It's not usually you come high and you come back down. And usually we're not even aware that our tone has elevated until we've come back to a level of conscientiousness. And when I'm on college campuses, one of the things that I teach is that our mind, our body isn't wired to think and do at the same time. You're either thinking or you're doing. So when you are, if your state of emotions are not neutralized, if you're upset, if you're angry, if you're hangry, if you're furious, if you are disappointed, your whole your ability to think rationally and objectively, it does not exist. You can only think rational and objectively when you are in a state of like being neutral, when your emotions are not heightened or your emotions are not high. And if you think about a time where your emotions were high and maybe how you may have behaved out of what would typically be character, or you might have done something that you had to later go back and apologize, it's likely because when you're in a heightened emotional state, it's hard to be rational and objective. So I say that to say, if you know you're approaching a conversation that requires something that it even upsets you to talk about, you have to slow down so you can create an awareness, so you can actually think and listen to the tone that you're actually conveying to the other person. Because again, the intention of communication is that it would be received. So if your tone is heightened, we run the risk of being pushed away versus being persuaded, or pushed away versus being receptive. So definitely slow down. The last thing I want to say on the topic of tone is that your body language will parallel your tone. So if you are attempting to have a very maybe it's a hard conversation and you're lying down in bed, your tone will likely be relaxed. So elevate your body if you want your tone to come across as maybe a little bit more firm, maybe a little bit more intentional, and a little bit more engaged. If you are standing up and people are sitting down and you're upset, maybe you would sit down so that you can control, or you're not like pointing down at people. Like think about those are if you think about it, that's a lot to think about when you're attempting to communicate something. And we should actually be that aware. Like we should be aware of what our hands are doing, what our legs and arms are doing when we're communicating something that's very sensitive. So sit down so that you can maybe control your body language. If you're sitting in a meeting and you're slouched in your chair, perhaps you may sit up, sit on the edge of the chair. So monitoring your body language so that it mirrors your tone. Those are the three that I have for you. And I want you to keep in mind, like a warm and friendly tone makes people feel appreciated, makes people feel heard. It's more receptive. It's more welcoming. If you have a harsh and critical tone, it can make people feel maybe attacked or criticized. And a good example of this was yesterday. I was at I volunteer for a nonprofit, and it was our final session of the year. And all of the mentors, I'm a mentor for the nonprofit, went around and gave some advice to share with the high school students about who were going off to college. And everybody went. When we got to this one guy, to be honest, I can't even tell you what he said because all I could hear was his tone. He was very, he sounded like Hitler. Um, I'm gonna try and mock him. To me, this is what I heard him say. So I'm gonna tell you this, and I'm gonna tell you one time. You gotta be serious. I should have recorded him. Oh my god, he would have been a great case study for this. This is my point. And what I did was I observed the kids' body language in the room. So some kids went from listening because some of the mentors who were speaking, well, not some, most of them shared some really great tips. So some kids went from listening to their head down, to the head to the side. No one wants to be talked to in a tone that comes across as condescending. So sometimes as a communicator, we're so passionate about something that we are ignoring how our enthusiasm about that might affect the listener. So while what he was saying was great, it was real, it was raw, and it was true, I don't think how he delivered it was effective. And that's what our parents were saying when they would say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. It's the same concept. What they were attempting to teach us was the importance of our tone. And so being intentional about our volume and our pitch, and then how we're emphasizing words. So if you talk with your hands and you do this a lot, or you do like you bang on the table a lot, or you like tap something a lot, that's something that you may do and you might not even be aware of it, but imagine how those things may come off as aggressive um, to the person whom you're attempting to convey. Um, and when we are approaching conversations that are sensitive, when we're approaching conversations in which the other person is already upset or distressed, or their emotional state is not neutralized, our tone matters more. So if a person's already at 100 essentially, or even 50, then meeting them at 50 is like asking for conflict. It's so important that we have a level of conscientiousness about a person's emotional state when we are attempting to communicate with them, especially when it's someone that we love. So thinking through that, when you see someone is already upset, they're already kind of flustered, what kind of tone can you bring to that conversation that will allow them to feel somewhat at ease because they're already maybe discontented or unhappy. So we come in to be, we want them to feel heard, and we want to be welcome into their space to help get them to a resolve. And what that looks like is different for all of us, but the intentionality about how we're speaking to them, it matters. It so matters. Last thing I'm going to say is just because you're in charge doesn't mean you have to speak in an in charge way. You can be in charge of individuals and teams without communicating from a tone of, I'm in charge. Some of the greatest examples of leadership are folks who never speak to their subordinates in a way they don't even realize they're being led. They feel so empowered that it almost feels like they are leading their leader. And a lot of that is the language in which a leader uses to speak to their team. And I think it's the same thing in relationships. You can be leading your spouse, it doesn't matter the gender, and they not even realize that you're leading them because you're speaking to them in a way in which it's easy to receive and they feel like very receptive. So your tone matters. I talk about your words matter, and they do, but the tone of your voice, your pitch, and the emphasis on those things, they matter. So when I say stop yelling and do this instead, what I'm asking folks to do is really like think about how your tone is coming across. And sometimes whispering is way more powerful than yelling. If you think about like when a person starts to speak softly, your heightened level of um attention because you want to catch what they're saying. When a person is yelling, there's not there's not the same level of maybe effort on the listener's behalf to catch what you're saying. And I don't know if other people have this, but I actually have a noise sensitivity. So if something is loud, it's really discomforting to my eardrum, like a high pitched voice or someone yelling for a very long period of time. And so when I'm speaking, I always think about there are different types of learners who I'm speaking to. There'll be people who are hearing impaired, visually impaired. There'll be people who like to be hands on. They don't like to sit down classroom style. It's my job as the person whom is owning the stage with power to think about those people and how they receive communication best and to tailor my message to meet each of them. What questions do you have? If you have any questions or experiences about tone, I would love for you to drop them in the comments box and share. Do you have any encounters in which someone's tone might have pushed you away or maybe pushed you forward? If you think about how someone communicates with you, do you feel like their communication is welcoming or do you feel criticized? And that's crazy, right? Like your small change in tone could make a person feel open or it could make a person feel withdrawn just by your tone. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Sometimes we could say that back to some people. Oh man, I had this video and I didn't play it. I didn't put it inside of my scenes, but it was a coach in the locker room. He was giving a pep talk to his team, and in the pep talk, he talked about he started off really like slow, and he started off really slow and low. He talked about his failures and things that he wish he could have done differently as an older man. And then his tone increased. It got louder as he was attempting to like um get the players more and get like in excited about winning the championship. And then his tone went back down. A variation in tone is also probably more pleasing to a listener than you staying at an elevated pitch. So think about that too. If you do have moments when you're high, just come back down. And again, a lot of this, you would literally have to watch yourself to even know that you're doing it. So if you have a chance to record anytime you're speaking, doesn't matter how insignificant or small it might be, that's a good time to evaluate your tone. That is a good time. So prop up your phone, get your tripod, and find a way to capture your tone so that you can assess if you are coming across the way that you intend. The intention of our communication doesn't matter if the impact of it affects a person opposite of what we intended. So it doesn't matter about the intention. What matters is the impact. And we have the ability to we have some say over that when we're intentional about our tone. I would love to know what you took away from tonight. You can drop that in the comments, share something that you took away, or maybe a main point that you took away. And what's something that you're going to practice? I would love to hear that too. And next week, what are we talking about next week? Oh my goodness. Okay, so this is a nerd in me when it comes to the realm of speaking. But if you've ever been asked to speak about something and you had to create content, or content is just what you're going to say. You had to create what you're going to say in front of the audience. And maybe let's say it was for at least 10 minutes. It needed exercises and games and you felt overwhelmed. Well, next week we'll be talking about how to create content that connects with your audience. Keep them on the edge of their seat. It doesn't matter if it's a staff meeting, icebreaker, a graduation speech. It's the same formula that I use for everything. And I'll be sharing that secret sauce next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. If you've been catching the entire Stage Power series, I would love to know what's been your favorite episode and why. You can share that in the comments. I definitely check the comments and the notifications. That's it for tonight. I'll see you next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I love you. There's absolutely nothing you could do about it. Good night. You are excellence. Your mind is of excellence. Your visions are of excellence. Your unique superpower is nothing short of excellence. You amplify a voice of excellence. Your contribution to this world will be of excellence. You will achieve your highest goals and desires with excellence. Excellence in everything, every